Overthinking Futurama.
Hello, viewer watching this sometime after the year 2020. Remember when TVs weren't in color? I don't, but sadly, I do remember when they were nearly square. This episode first aired on March 28, 1999, meaning that even the parts before Fry got frozen were set in the future. No one would have noticed if they hadn't put visual scan lines on these old-timey video game graphics, which makes the fact that they did that much more awesome. By the way, Zoomers, I'm sure I don't need to point out that this video game's boss and its title, Monkey Fracas Jr., are references to Donkey Kong. However, this thing is called an arcade cabinet, an ancient piece of tech expertly crafted to separate nerds from their quarters. For the low price of your entire allowance, you could play a needlessly hard video game with awkward controls until such time as you had run out of lives and couldn't afford to purchase more continues. So yeah, it was mobile gaming before there was mobile gaming.
You stink, loser!
This kid is voiced by Kath Soucie, who would regularly voice Hubert Farnsworth later in the series. In this first episode, she also does the voice of Fry's girlfriend Michelle, who would later be voiced by Sarah Silverman. Constantine's watch here is displaying roughly the same time as the clock we saw on the wall of the pizzeria. However, he's wearing it upside down, which makes me think Michelle is not exactly trading up.
I hate my life.
It's taken exactly 48 seconds for this show to establish the setting, the theme, and the patheticness of Fry's life, with no tedious exposition. Bravo! So I guess nothing in this series would have happened if Fry had been in the habit of waiting for an answer when knocking on a door?
Pizza delivery for, icy wiener.
This is hilarious, but we learn later that Nibbler called in the pizza order. Why would he put his entire cosmic mission at risk by using such an obviously fake name? Why is everyone in the world counting down at the same time? And is the Pope seriously going to hold up a new sign for each count? I didn't believe it the first time someone told me that Nibbler's shadow can actually be seen in the first episode of Futurama. It's still hard to believe that they were planning so far ahead, especially considering how unsupportive the network was of Futurama during its initial run, and it pains me to think how this moment might have had no payoff if things had gone differently. Is 1,000 years the default setting? Hold up, there are a whole bunch of things we gotta talk about here. First off, we know from Bender's big score that Bender is piloting this front ship, and that the rest are holographic decoys, so how they're doing any damage to the city is anyone's guess. Secondly, though, this establishes that all of the time travel done with the Universal Machine Language timecode is being experienced in the show's original timeline, not some alternate timeline, which implies that all of the artifacts that Bender went back in time to steal have already been stolen, and there are a zillion Benders waiting in the limestone cavern beneath the Planet Express building. Not to mention this undoes a whole bunch of canon that's established later about things that happened as a result of Fry going missing after he got frozen, because a duplicate of Fry has returned to the year 2000 and picked up his old life prior to becoming Lars and being frozen again. The bottom line here is a quick time travel joke that happens many seasons later in the series has caused a huge mess for the timeline. Was it worth it? Well, of course it was, but still. Also, this takes place in 2308. Did nothing about the New York City skyline change in the 300 years after Fry was frozen? And why was the building that contained Fry's cryogenics pod the only one left standing?
Cool, just like in Star Trek. Oh!
Fry sure is lucky that door hit him in the face before he could finish saying those forbidden words.
Just ask the question.
I'll ax you to speak proper English. Xmas story establishes that the word is axe and that ask is an archaic pronunciation. You know what? I'm gonna count how many times they get this wrong.
What's with the eye?
I'm an alien, all right?
Has Leela never taken a DNA test that shows her that she's basically human? This episode makes it look like it's a standard part of being assigned a career.
Your DNA test shows one living relative, Professor Hubert Farnsworth.
Actually, Fry has at least 6 living relatives. Hubert's parents are still alive, as is his brother, Floyd, and he has at least 2 offspring, Ignar and Cubert, a son and a clone, respectively. Now I know there are good reasons why some of these people don't show up in the database as relatives of Fry, and I'm not going to go through them all here, but I don't see why there wouldn't be record of Floyd. He got an online degree in rodeo, and we can be pretty sure he's still alive based on what Bender says about him in the Season 9 episode Near Death Wish. But I find it slightly more unbelievable that none of the other branches of the family tree made it to the year 3000.
I'm going to implant your career chip. It'll permanently label you as a delivery boy.
We're shown later in the series, and even in this very episode, that career chips are in no way tied to the person that they're initially implanted in. They can be removed and reimplanted in the wrong person with no consequences, which means their permanence is overstated and they're more of a bureaucratic license to do a job than an accurate representation of a person's skills, and there must be a huge black market for them, and I have to wonder about the point of having them in the first place. However, I digress. My main point is that Leela takes her job too seriously.
Hold still, damn it! I don't have good depth perception.
I see what you did there. The hardest thing to believe about this scene is that this is a shutter-style billboard and not a digital screen. This sign says no hover zone in a world where literally every vehicle hovers.
Radio City Mutant Hall.
Why would they call it that? Mutants are a pariah in this society. That's like calling your monument Madison GPU Scalper's Garden. The title sequence promised to be a Statue of Liberty holding a badass ray gun, not this glorified kiddie slide. Tonight, I will lay awake pondering the purpose of robot fish. Also, don't blink or you'll miss Blinky, the three-eyed fish from The Simpsons, although he is a slightly different color here. Did they really build this transparent tube system right over top of this circle-line shipwreck with a skeleton hanging out of it right where every traveler can see it? This is how ghost stories get started, okay?
Bite my shiny metal ass.
I'm sure everyone who's ever seen Futurama knows Bender's classic catchphrase, but were you aware that it's the first thing he says in the entire series? What is this thing? A plant pot? A garbage can? What's this pipe coming out of it? Do I want to know? Yes, this is a very dark concept for a comedy show, but not one that's unprecedented in science fiction. And the idea that somebody found a way to monetize one of the worst things imaginable is a top-notch satirical chastisement of humanity. We all know the trope of how in the future meals are going to be in pill form, right? Well, how about putting a programming language in liquor form?
Why would a robot need to drink?
I don't need to drink. I can quit any time I want.
No, you can't. Liquor powers your fuel cells and you'll power down without it. Then again, at this point, Bender still believes he has a backup unit that'll kick in if he ever dies, so wow. It's amazing how many cool ideas from later episodes really tangle things up when you go back and watch the previous ones. I see why you're not supposed to overthink these things. Now that said, the show's creators knew full well that their fans were going to comb through and analyze every little thing, and they even created a couple of alien languages for the observant viewer to decipher. Although in reality, they're not so much languages as they are encoded forms of English, but who has time for those technicalities? The first one, known as Alien Language 1 or sometimes Alienese, is a simple substitution cipher that replaces English letters with alien symbols, and it can be seen right here on this sign which says Drink Slurm. This first episode actually included a clue to deciphering the language. Earlier in the episode, we see the Drink Slurm sign written in plain English.
Okay, but I don't want people thinking we're robosexuals.
It becomes a recurring theme throughout the series that intimate relations between a robot and a human are taboo in the future. Because in the year 3000, humanity's forgotten 90% of the reason why robots were invented in the first place.
So if anyone asks,
Axes! Unless Bender went back to the late 90s and stole the whole Google startup, I refuse to believe that this is the best method for finding somebody in the 30th century.
This is Officer 1BDI,
I see what you did there.
requesting backup.
We'll be there in 5 minutes.
But how is Leela suddenly some sort of law enforcement officer? Is this part of the job description of being a fate assignment officer or a cryogenic counselor, as it says on her career chip?
we can hide in here. It's free on Tuesdays.
December 31st, $29.99 will indeed be a Tuesday.
I'm Leonard Nimoy.
Spock? Hey, do the thing.
I don't do that anymore.
But the fact that you acknowledge that you used to do it makes you a liar when you claim that you don't remember Star Trek in the episode Where No Fan Has Gone Before. Hang on a second, we know from the episode The Honking that David Duchovny was an early incarnation of Calculon. So this guy is an imposter. Or Calculon's a liar. Actually, that probably makes more sense. You had to know they'd put series creator Matt Groening in the head museum, right? From Clinton through to Nixon, the presidents are arranged in chronological order, but then it jumps straight from Nixon to George Washington? And next to Clinton is Warren Harding, but the wide shot shows George Washington all the way over on the right-hand side. And in this shot, the head next to Nixon was Andrew Jackson. Confusion, discontinuity, severed heads. Yep, that's American politics. There are 2 Grover Clevelands on this shelf, which is clearly a joke referencing the fact that Grover Cleveland served 2 non-consecutive terms as president, with Benjamin Harrison serving between them. However, my brain is still compelled to try and make sense of this, which makes me think time travel paradox, which makes me think someone used the universal machine language timecode to go back in time and decapitate every president of the United States to bring their heads back to the future, which explains why they have living heads for presidents that have been long dead. Please sound off in the comments about how this theory has absolutely no flaws whatsoever.
That's it. You just made my list.
Nixon famously had an enemies list that became public during investigation of the Watergate scandal.
Keep your big nose out of this, eyeball.
No one makes fun of my nose.
Matt Groening actually had to fight to get Leela's nose to be drawn this big. Apparently the designers wanted it to be a lot smaller. What could Jimmy Carter possibly have to be this happy about? Is it the same thing Bill Clinton's grinning about?
Oh, we're trapped!
What exactly is Bender worried about? Why is he running from Leela in the first place? Is his attachment to Fry, a guy he's basically just met, already that strong? I mean, I know robots do everything faster, including evolving and believing how quickly things spring up, but this is next level.
If someone programmed you to jump off a bridge, would you do it?
I'll have to check my program. Yep.
I have no commentary about this, it's just one of my favorite moments in the entire series.
You're full of crap, Fry.
I suspect more is going on with Bender here than just him losing his inhibition against bending for non-constructive purposes. Prior to this point in the episode, we've seen that Bender has a penchant for mischief, but he's also shown evidence of a social conscience and empathy toward human beings. After this point, we'll see him attempt to steal Leela's ring, and of course as the series progresses, his trademark indifference toward human life becomes apparent. So is this where it started? Please sound off in the comments. Also, no one would have noticed if they hadn't made Bender's features glow here, which makes the fact that they did that much more awesome. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that a shock of electricity like this is later established to be like a drug for robots, which does bolster the accuracy of the behavioral change theory, and also those commercials from my childhood with the fried egg. Or Bender's head is now a frying pan, or something. It's been a while.
Yes! From now on, I'm going to bend what I want, when I want, who I want.
The bars are back.
I don't know how you did that.
Stop doing my job, Fry. This graffiti, written in Alien Language 1, translates to Venusians go home. And if you're curious, although we're not introduced to them in this episode, the aliens from Venus are the three-eyed, tentacled, gelatinous blobs. I could question the logistics of literally building ground above an old city to support a new city on top of it, but that seems like a little too much effort. And honestly, the bigger question I have is, where are the mutants? Is this part of the New York sewer system, or are the mutant sewers below this yet?
What are you doing?
Quitting.
Leela drops the chip here, but in the Cryonic Woman we find out that she kept the chip and, of course, accidentally implants it in Fry. So clearly she either picked it up right after this or went back for it eventually. But come on, Leela, if you're gonna use this kind of dramatic flair, you gotta commit.
Hello, I'm Dick Clark's Head. Welcome to a special year 3000 edition of New Year's Rockin' Eve.
Huh, I guess Seacrest didn't work out. Hey, it's that number 9 guy. He'll be an important character in about 8 years. Here we see his humble beginnings as a lowly background character, wearing a green number 9 t-shirt instead of his normal long-sleeved white robe thing. It must have been laundry day. Also, no tinfoil hat. I guess he's either just okay with the screeching thoughts of all of those New Year's Rockin' Eve attendees, or maybe the madness hasn't fully set in yet. Anyway, the 9 on his shirt is actually from an idea they had about societal caste or class system, where certain people would wear numbers and lower numbers meant you were lower down on the totem pole or something like that. But it's an idea that they abandoned, and number 9 man had a completely different story later on. Yep, completely and totally abandoned. We'll never ever see a storyline where characters are ranked by a visible number they wear, am I right?
By God, I am your nephew!
Can this light bulb mean other things, or is this a dedicated nephew identifying machine? Look at this, it's got built-in chairs that are fastened to the floor. Is this a common thing that the professor has to do? Also, the light bulb is not illuminated when they cut to the wide shot, and also, why are they still using incandescent light bulbs?
And here's where I keep assorted lengths of wire.
What is his hand doing? Actually, scratch that. I don't want to know.
We have you partially surrounded.
Yep, I see what you did there.
I suppose it is technically possible, though I am already in my pajamas.
This was going to be a catchphrase for the professor, but this is the first of 2 times we will ever hear it. Unless they bring it back after the Hulu renewal, at which point I will correct the record, as long as I'm not already in my pajamas. Holy nuts, they brought out 4 laser cannons to shoot down some job deserters. These guys take their jobs too seriously. Why does this thing start at 11 and count down to 10? Here we see the tomb of Pharaoh Amup Chuckin.
7,
And in France, they speak English because French has become an incomprehensible dead language. No one would have noticed if they hadn't put a polar ice cap on Mars, which just makes the fact that they did that much more awesome.
All right! I'm a delivery boy!
Fry's first name was originally going to be Curtis. It was changed to Philip to honor the late Phil Hartman, who had regularly appeared on Matt Groening's first series, The Simpsons, and was originally cast to play Zapp Brannigan in Futurama. That has nothing to do with this scene, I just had to stick it in somewhere. Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into my favorite TV show, Futurama. I'm sure you have lots of thoughts and ideas about this episode that I didn't mention, so I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Yeah, let me know what you thought. Like and sub, there's lots more episodes to come. See you in the next one.